All right, my friends, I know it just keeps getting insaner and insaner. That is a no-toe. You see how it abruptly ends with its toes coming over here, which are built in, and it turns into mud. Well, mud is clay. Clay forms from eroded, bloody muscle. After the guy died in the hot, steaming, boiling flood, nobody's ever taken that into account. That's what happened. It was hot. This is recorded. And now, this is the runoff of his body surrounding this. They dug right around until they hit the end of his feet. Right out here. After that, it's no good. It's just mud. Now, I'm going to show you on here, here's the calcaneus heel bone. Right here, same as on mine. All right, and I'll show you in the anatomical. And then there is some other tendinous material in here that does not transform. There's like bunionish things. I don't know how to explain it, but you'll see on the heel bone what I'm talking about. All right, this is a basalt mine. They're mining basalt. They are mining from a no-toe, from the Great Flood. You see this whole mound here? That was a giant died in the hot flood. It was steaming hot water came down because of almost an impact with Venus, actually. This is all recorded. Read Velikovsky. He was the one they destroyed for coming up with the truth. This is a no-toe foot. This doesn't turn to mud, which is clay, which is eroded flesh, right on that borderline. That's an abrupt transition. It also has this, which is the cutout for your fibula. You have a tibia that sits in this little cradle, and that comes down to here. And then you have the fibula that sits on the side. And that's gone. It's gone on all of them. I have other ones, and we have a lot of these. They're all gone. Because it's a little snap attachment. It just falls off. Now, I'm going to go deep into the chemistry here and the physiology. They take everything they could get from the actual basalt. Let me show you, using my friend Caesar, who has volunteered his gorgeous neck to prove this. And I also have a bone. I have all kinds of stuff to prove this. Okay, this is my friend Caesar, and this is his throat. I think you'll be able to see that. And this is his neck. He died laying over this way. I'm going to show you the rest of them in a second, and his feathers and everything. This is basalt now. It'll dry up in a minute, and we'll look at it closely in a microscope. This is Caesar. All right, you see the feathers in the back of his head? That is feldspar. Feldspar is the product of aluminum silicates, and they coat and protect the contents of whatever they're surrounded. He died in the Great Flood, just like they all did. See, it's flat here? No detail. No detail. Died like that. And that's why his neck came down this way and it snapped, because he was laying here. And there's his neck. And he has an artery running up here. But that is basalt. So we know there was bones in here. We know there was ligaments and tendons and muscle and nerves and everything else. It's all basalt now. That's why these things are so lucrative, if they can find these. But they only exist where there was a giant that died there, and the feet are the best part. You know, you can spend a week looking at this, but here's where I'm going to take you. Right to the spots to show that whiteness and all that. All right, so this is the heel bone sticking down. That's the calcaneus. And this other spot is right here, where there's a lot of white running off there, I believe. I could be wrong. All right, as I'm claiming that is a no-toe, and they're mining it. And this here is where the fibula is. You got a tibia, the big bone that sits in that cradle right there. And then you have the other bone that hangs off the side, the fibula. And they're mining this for basalt. Now, I'm going to show you this in a microscope, uno momento, because this is nothing more than basalt as well. And inside the fascia, that's where the basalt is. they've got to skim off the top, but that's just nothing more than clay and mud and decomposed flesh from around the guy's leg as he was standing there. Okay, I showed you that, I believe it's a finger, I could be wrong, but these are the anchors, and they put all this really, really tough stuff and embed it into the flesh. And then, you see these straps? That's what it pulls on. You can't pull out of there. That's why your tendons are so tough and they stick in so hard. All right, now I just put a little water on there, and that's the black and the red blood. But I believe there's also some chemistry in here that is where these attachments take place. And it's this kind of a color. I found that in my big fingers, right exactly where the tendons lock in, the same thing. And I don't think it's blood. I didn't do the chemistry on it, but I don't think it is. But at any rate, this is how your body anchors things in so you can pull back and forth and you don't rip apart. All right, this is the rock I think might be this fingertip. And there's the artery. All right, they sort of blow out. And here's the vein. If I can home in on that. I'm doing this freehand. There's the vein. See, it's black. And out on the edge is the interstitium. You see how it's very, very obvious transition to the edge. And when you come inside in the flesh, and the little white things are little bits of connective tissue that run through the flesh. But when this turns into basalt, it's virtually all the same. You break it up a little, you could see stuff in basalts that is not exactly what basalt is. But you see way out here on the edge, they all have that interstitium. The same thing on the lungs and everything. Boy, it's never ever been clearer than this. This is the interstitium, all the slidey stuff that were the flexible membranes. This is the outermost skin, or a membrane, or it's the top layer. It might be coating an organ, it might be your skin, it might be your scalp, but right under it is this interstitium. Now, you see it? How obvious could that be? Now, we're going to go in close to where it implants into that tendon. Right there is the implant spot. Again, I'm sort of wiggling this myself. Right there is where it implants. And it broke off. That right there is, and that comes out. And then it goes right into that fleshy stuff. You see it? The black is the vein blood. The red is the artery blood. And all this stuff looks funny because it's real wet. Let me dry it up a little bit. I had a hard time getting the water to take. You see, now that's a little better. Usually you put a little water on it, it jumps right in. This has been exposed, it's been sitting in my shop here for at least 10 years, more than that. And so I guess it hardens up after a while. But you know what it is? It's key to the environment that it's in. How long is it under the water for? What was the chemistry of the water? How much salts? Was there acids? Was it next to some organ that had? Because you're in a body, so you're going to have some kind of organs near you. All these things have to be taken into account. Geology is just not what it was told you. It's just not that way. Okay, if you know about anatomy, every bone, if this was a bone, you see, they have a tendon that runs down with them that it attaches to pull that bone. And I believe this is a tendon that's just snapped off. All right, so here's my claims. Everything I'm showing you here is biological. They're stone now. And that is the foot of a no-toe, just like this was, only a smidge bigger. There is absolutely no reason for it to abruptly transition like this into mud. And you see all this coming down from it? It's all because it's eroded away from the foot. The leg eroded away. All right, and these are the white spots. I've showed that very clearly, I believe. You see this here? That's this little bump right here on the same as mine. They all have that. I have other ones that have the same exact same thing. That's the cradle, the saddle. And that sat in there. Now, all of this is completely basalt, just as this will be inside. This is abruptly transitioned into the muddy pile of eroded flesh. All right, this is unbelievable. This is this little lip. Can you see that? Yeah. That's that little lip right there that comes up. And there's a little spot here that I'm going to put in a microscope. And I believe that is the tendon assembly, the calcaneus tendon that comes up the back and hooks up to the bone and goes forward. Well, it doesn't hook up to the bone necessarily. It goes up to the muscle. All right, just so we're clear with this. This is just like a regular foot. It has an arch and all that stuff, and it's exactly like a regular foot. And this little spot in the back, if you can see, it supports the bone so it doesn't slide off. And that's where the bone was before it became detached. And this is from blood. When you see that's from blood. You see all up in here, that's from blood too. No toes. Alright, what I want to do is show you, I told somebody on a video the other day I was going to put water on this and then show you the difference once the water's on here. I'll do it now. I did it the other day, but I didn't point it out. This, once again, is the interstitial, well, it's actually the skin or leather or whatever it was coating this body part. This right here is where all the blood ran down. It must have been sitting something along this line, because all the blood has run down here from the bone. All right, so all we have up here is basalt. Whoops. All right, so I'm going to put a little water on here. We'll take a look at it in a second. Yeah, see, the blood sucked the water right in on this one. See, this is the dark spot. Wherever the darkest brown is where the blood drifted down to. So up here you have really raw basalt. These little white spots are connective tissues. Everything has to be pulled by something. Even muscle does not do that type of stuff. Muscle contracts, but it is not your stabilizing component. It is tendons that hold you together. You see this? I'm always talking about abrupt transitions. What does that mean, abrupt transition? It means you go from one to another. Like right there, that's an abrupt transition. You're going from completely tendon, right, almost into completely muscle. That's, whoops, you can't even see that, can you? How about that? Now, an abrupt transition is not only from one tissue type to another. The tendons have a tendency to break flat as a pancake at a certain spot just away from where they embed, which is, to me, is a transition zone that goes from one, and I have seen them, because you can see the blocks of colors change as they go up in certain types of, I don't know whether CAT scans, X-ray machines, whatever they are, but they show that there's different layers. And that's where they break along those layers. All right, first of all, there's all kinds of different attachments in your body. So these tendons attach in different ways. I call them tendon balls. And they have the straps coming out of them, depending upon where they anchor. You know, I was never a religious person. I don't want to get, uppity about this whole thing. I'm just showing you what I found. What I found supports what was said. What was said is pretty important if it's true. Now, Jesus said the rocks will cry out. And it's exactly what's happening right now. Now, the stuff I'm exposing here is, nobody's known this for 2,000 years. But Jesus was what they call an Essean. And an Essean, they're Gnostics. Let me show you something. Can you see that over there? Yes, you can. This is what you should be studying. Mythology, ancient mysteries, Marcus Aurelius, all of the ancient, Ovid and Hesiod and all that. Anyway, this is the Gnostic Society Library, the Nag Hammadi texts. These were only discovered 1945. And this is some serious stuff. Hold on one second. Okay, my friends, this is going to blow you away. It does me. The Gospel of Thomas is in this Gnostic text that they discovered in 1945. And it is very well preserved. And I have it here in page form. We're going to look at a couple of things. But the Gospel of Thomas was supposedly written by doubting Thomas, who was the scribe of Jesus. He wrote all his sayings, and they are just crazy. I'm serious, you're never going to figure them out. I can't. Some, yes. Now, this is what really took me aback. That right there. All right, this is just absolute shattering of my mind. This is Typhon. You see his head? That's a bird's head. Or in the case of Typhon, it was a dragon. And all of these are flails that came down. And he had a bonnet on his head, like a bird crest. And then at the bottom, he had thighs of a human and coils of a viper. And guess what? It's exactly what they say in ancient texts, in the myths. Okay, my friends, I'm not going to go through a whole new presentation. Come up and watch this. It says the evidence to support dragon tales in every culture. Every culture has dragons, and they are. I found them all over the earth. So is everybody else. It's no hidden secret anymore. And you can go right up here and watch this, and if you can tell me that that's not a dragon, I want to do that. If you have some influence in the world, and you can say, oh, that's not a dragon, and then if you're a PhD or a teacher or something like that, let's do it. I'm ready. We'll do it on Zoom. I'd love to do that. Because then I can point out the details, and I can be respectful. If you say, oh, that's very hard to believe, now we can get along. But when you attack me, that's what all I've had really, is attacks or complete avoidance. And now that's where I am now, because nobody can attack my evidence. I've been told, oh, you're not doing anything, you must have contaminated this, you can't show me that. No. I'm not going to look at rocks because they can't be what you're saying. Well, until you look at them, you can't say. And that's what's happened. That's not good. And I think you should present this to your educators. Educators are supposed to educate. Education means truth. Truth means investigating substantial leads. I have DNA tests, I have the CAT scans, I have specimens, I have chemistry, I have anatomists, I have everything. And history, all of that stuff. Let's look at Apollodorus and I'll leave it at that. All right, once again, I'm not going to get crazy. This is from the library of Apollodorus. This is a couple of 100 years before Christ. And such is the legend about the earth and titans and giants and all this stuff. Typhon is what I was just talking about. That's the Gnostic logo. This is what blew me away. When the gods had overcome the giants, who we now know are miles tall. Exactly what... I love to credit people for the things that I have here, but I get a lot of things sent to me, and I'm not sure where I got this. But this is what tendons look like on the deepest, tiniest level. Here's what they're looking at here. It's just a little tiny pinch of one of these bundles. Is this, a little tiny pinch of it. And it's all of these little fibers. Let me show you what they also look like. You see that? That's what the tendons are on their tiniest thing. And when they fracture right along a plane. Muscle's a little different. Let me show you muscle. All right, muscle's just a smidge different. Muscle's meant to contract. You see, this is contracted when the white and the black meet together. That's contracted. They erode and these bands give way. But this is tiny, this is tinier, this is tiniest. All right, this is when they come together. These two, they slide in together. You see that little thing on the bottom there? And when they're relaxed, they're open. They have a wave here that can go, and otherwise they're blocks. And those blocks erode everywhere. And they're seen on Mars as well. Look up the Mars crab. You'll see these blocks all eroded. It's the red planet because all of the blood cells are eroded out of all of the gigantic creatures there. Same as here on Earth. It's time to pay attention to this. I don't know what else to say. I don't care if it's not important to you, but I don't think it should be kept out of the public domain, which basically it is at this point. Okay, this is about as cool as it gets. It's very hard to deny this. What could possibly create these patterns like this in these blocks and then these little fibrils coming out? Here it is. There's big tendon assemblies, and then they get smaller and smaller. You see these hex patterns? That could very well be these, and this could be the tops and all that. It's gone. Or it could be continued right down to the fibrils. These could be the tiny fibrils. And they lop off right even to each other because it's easiest for them to separate that way. They are on that plane I showed you. And they're tiny. I mean, they are tiny. But they're tough as hell. Okay, once you get into mud fossils, I can explain all of these things. These layers of tissue and these crazy formations. Ancient mysteries. Let's talk about them. Let's see what we can discover. I mean, there's a lot of them. All right, remember I told you the sarcomeres, which is the muscle, they erode right on those lines that go, and then you have all these little connective tissue pieces that would normally lock together. Well, guess where this is? This is on Mars. It's called the Mars crab. Sorry about my voice. Here it is right here. Up close, here it is right here. That is an artery. That's arterial blood. These are the blood vessels that service the tissues that contract. That's what it is right there, Mars crab. And there's all kinds of, like the Mars blueberries, the Mars Morse code. They just have to pay attention to it. That's all. And I think that's the most important thing, is paying attention to what you see. These are Mars blueberries. They're on our Earth too, same thing. They call them the Moki marbles. And they were interstitial, and everything was attached with a ball, and you could do this and that, but you always came back to where you're supposed to be. Once everything eroded away down to the basement layer, all that gooey stuff went away. Here's what you got left. All right, this is that big fingertip, and it's a thumb. It's almost certainly a right-hand thumb. You see how this hangs over? The bone is down here. And you got this hanging over. There's bone here. The rest of them are all pretty much centered. I'm pretty sure this is a right-hand thumb. You see how it's flat here? And this bump hangs over there. There's no bone there. All right, compared to my big guy, this is in my backyard. There's the fingernail. There's a little pad that sits behind. See, this one's in the center, so this one I think must be a normal digit. But this is almost 3 feet long. This little guy here is only like 7 or 8 inches. So this is quite substantially larger. And I broke off a piece so I could get underneath where the DNA is. And I sent it off, and it was human as well. This one too. And the lung as well. All 3 of them DNA tested. I extracted the DNA very carefully, sent it off. They did the test and said 2 out of the 3 were dense. The lung and this finger. Because I went deep inside. And this thing here is just saturated with blood. It's a lung. The fingertip didn't have quite as much DNA, but it was still, he said, yeah, no question, 100%. Plus I had the hand that goes with it. Remember I showed you I broke a piece off? That's it right there. There's the fingerprints. Still fingerprints on there. And that's why I had to get it off of there, because there's nothing there. I couldn't find anything that even looked remotely like blood. So, down there, saturated. Your fingers are absolutely saturated with blood. They're the terminals. Your blood goes down there, and then it comes back up through your veins. You don't get much more saturated with blood than that. One side is the artery, the other side is the vein. And everyone has an artery and a vein. All right, remember I was saying I named this thing a spurlock? It's a flap, and there it is right there. It attaches something to something else. This happens to be a block of muscle or meat attached to another spot in your body so that it won't rip out of there. This one, I believe, has an injury. And they all have them. I mean, it's like this right here. That's it right there. You see it? They all have them. I mean, even the ones that are turned to really like even glass, like that's a heart. That's a heart, and I found it in this. I can't see it quickly, but you see how these things. That's blood. It's just really incredible what preserved and is missed. Even like a hair follicle. You know, your hairs can stand up on end. You feel you shiver. That's right there. There's a muscle that attaches to your hair. Can pull it straight up. That's where the hair's coming out. These are the blood supplies to feed it. That's the hair growing right up, coming straight up through. And guess what? You see this little globby looking thing? You see that? That's the sebaceous gland. I'm not kidding you. That is a hair follicle. You need a microscope. Well, you know, you can pull them out and you can see them. And what you're getting is this bundle with the hair attached coming out. But I know you probably never knew there was a muscle attached to it. I never really did, I don't think. I can't remember now, to be honest, but it makes sense. You know, your hair stands up on end. And the sebaceous gland is where it oils it up for you. All right, I know this is running long as hell, so I'm going to wrap it up. This lung is this lung here. DNA tested, CAT scanned, the whole 9 yards. This I didn't bother. Blood was bubbling out from these little holes. And that right there, all of those little pocks are the alveoli. Normally air would go in there. But in certain circumstances, they fill up with silicates. In other certain cases, they turn into basalts. Depends on where they were and what they were exposed to. Now, this is all lungs. I'm not kidding you. This one here, there's no question. This one here is also no question, but you make it for yourself. That's a lung. This one here is all eroded to a point where all of the blood vessels are open, and the lung is still got a lot of red blood in there. This one here is half on and half off. It's the same as this one, only the heavy pleura. This stuff is thick and dense. That lets your lung do this all day long, or you're done. And again, flat on the back. Died like that in the flood. Flat on the back. Died like that in the flood. Flat on the back. Died in the flood. Died in the flood. Caesar. It's just what happened. Just what happened. Okay, I know I never stopped, but what does it mean the rocks will cry out? What was happening was Christ was coming in to Jerusalem, and the Pharisees saw all the people saying, "Oh, here comes the king, he's going to be a good guy and he's going to help us all." And they said, "Teacher, rebuke your disciples." And he said, Jesus replied, "I tell you, if they keep quiet, the stones will cry out." And the stones are crying out. And Jesus was a Gnostic, and they knew about Typhon and the giant dragons and the giants and all that stuff. They knew the myths of the Greeks and the Greco-Roman empires, because those people did collect all that data. And but most of it was lost over the course of time. All right, this is fragments of a faith forgotten. The Essenes. They, basing themselves on the sayings preserved in the canonical Gospels and on the description of the communities given in the Acts, many have supposed Jesus was a member of or intimately acquainted with the doctrines and disciples of Essene communities. Who were these people? Well, that's what we're going to talk about. But they were in touch with the myths, They knew about Typhon, and apparently they embraced that. All right, once again, I'm just doing too many of the same thing over and over. But this is evidence to support the dragon tales in every culture. I think I already talked about this. But I'm just going to play this real quickly. It's all written. This is all written. The whole story is, I didn't make it up. Well, let's start with his fiery red eye. All right, here's his eye flashing, streaming backwards. Now, let's go to the rest of his unkempt body. All right, I'm just going to stop it right there. There's his head. It runs all the way across North Africa. He's attacking this giant fish. It's time to see what is in front of your eyes. His neck goes all the way down. His body's 2 legs are just like the human legs. It says about his Typhon. It says the thighs are just like the human thighs, and then they have these coils, and he does. And this is a dragon, and he's spitting out toxin to try to kill that fish. I would say it's time to start to look at this stuff in a whole different way, instead of, you know, let me put it this way. It's easy to just go about your life and nothing changes. But if you're presented with evidence, and I presented this guy the other day, who was a very, very top shelf guy, I'm not going to mention any names, and he said, what are you trying to do, ruin my life? And I mean, I think he was serious, because if he started talking about it, yeah, it would ruin his life. I don't have much of a life to ruin. And those coils. But anyway, the coils run all the way down his legs, just like it showed in the pictures. They run all the way out here. That's his coils run all the way, and the same thing over here. And the thing standing up would be twice as high up, at least, as the International Space Station. That's only 254 miles up. This would be over 500 miles easy. It's over 1,000 miles tip to here. And I can't explain this. Don't ask me to explain it. Look and see what you think. All right, you see, here's another thing. They just don't want you to see this stuff. How tall is 3,000 ells in the book of Enoch? 3,000 is 11,250 feet. That's only 2 miles, so that's not really all that tall. I would have expected it to be a lot taller than that. Listen to this very carefully. This is from the Gnostic text. This is about Typhon. He's that one with the coils. The gods had overcome the giants. Earth, still more enraged, had intercourse with Tartarus and brought forth Typhon. That's that gigantic dragon in Africa. Excuse me. He was a hybrid between man and beast. Size and strength, he surpassed all of the other offspring of Earth. As far as his thighs, this is the thing. He was human shape and of such prodigious bulk he outtopped all the mountains. His head often brushed the stars. And then he talks about the coils that flip around, or that stretch all the way across Africa. You're going to have to come up and do a little research yourself. I've done this so many times, it's just starting to get irritating that nobody will pay enough attention that it becomes spoken of. But I guess that's just me. All right, here's it right there. Apollodorus of Athens. He was a librarian, basically, and both him and Samothrace served as librarians at the great library in Alexandria in Egypt. And that burnt down, I believe. Apollodorus left Alexandria 146. He died at 120. And that's about it.